Hello, everybody, and welcome to tonight's episode of Talkin' Lead, episode 60. We continue our journey and history into WrestleMania. We are not too far away from the 40th anniversary of WrestleMania, and we're very excited. This is probably one of the most in-depth series we've done with as far as looking into the history of all of it. But it's really fun, and we've been enjoying it. So joining me tonight on our panel, please, first and foremost, welcome one of our favorite people from the North. He's a great contributor to our AEZ Canada show. He's got great stories from his time working with WWF Canada back in the day. We like to welcome him every week. Amer, thanks for joining us, bud.
Glad to be here.
Sorry to my water. I'm thirsty. Next, we are joined by one of our favorite new people. He's got such an enriched history of pro wrestling, everything from the World Class Championship Wrestling days to early WCW to the territories. He's just a smart all-around guy, and I love chatting with him. Jason's with us tonight. Jason, thanks for joining.
Oh, you make me feel so special.
Well, I have to speak the truth, man. I mean, you know a lot.
Wow.
You know a lot.
If I ever get famous,
oh my
you're
God.
Be the guy that introduces me to the stage.
Don't blush. Don't blush.
Too late.
Don't
Too
blush
late.
yet. And finally, joining us tonight, one of our favorite people. Again, I say it every week. I'm going to keep saying it. Without him, we would not be here as if it wasn't for him putting this podcast together. Everyone's favorite producer, Connor. Connor, thanks for joining us, buddy.
Yeah, I haven't been on in a good while. I've been busy, but it's good to be back on Talking Lead. It's episode 60.
Yeah.
And while you're here, I just want to go ahead. I know you've got big aspirations for media passes, conglomerate appearances. So when you get to this point where we actually start getting sponsors, I'm calling it right now that I get to read the Blue Chew ads. They can have the rest of them. I get the Blue Chew ads.
Yeah, that sounds
Blue
good.
Chew.
Time to me.
Go for it.
I don't know what I would cover. Whatever ads we get, just I'll read them off. I don't care. I have my radio background, whatever.
If you want to hear some funny Blue Chew ads, go listen to Jim Ross's podcast when they start talking about Blue Chew and however old he is and all the medical problems he's having. That's a funny old dude, man.
Yeah.
Maybe mine will be Rogaine if we can get Rogaine as a sponsor. Just a little.
I'll do Stephen P. New. I had like the Stephen P. New song from Cornette is my ringtone on my phone. Actually, get him as a sponsor.
Yeah, perfect. Anyways, again, thank you guys for joining us tonight. Really glad y'all can join us. Not only us on the panel, but everybody watching and listening at home. If you didn't see earlier, we did have a great interview with Kevin Von Erich, which is up on YouTube. It will be on Spotify. Very interesting interview, great interview, well-spoken individual, very intelligent. We highly enjoyed that interview. But tonight,
genuine is the word I would use for him.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You want to see somebody that comes across as just they're genuine who they are, not trying to be something else for a camera.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Absolutely. But tonight, again, like I said, we continue our journey into the history of WrestleMania. Tonight, we cover 21 through 25. This is where we start seeing more of the Ruthless Aggression era transition into almost the PG era, as you would say. But the start off things was WrestleMania 21. And this one was an interesting one because I wouldn't say it changed a little bit as far as like logo wise and location, because we've seen them perform in Los Angeles before in previous WrestleManias. But this one just seemed like it was more mainstream for WWE. This was basically the whole, we're going a new direction. We want to feel more mainstream. You know, we saw the Hollywood stars and everything like that back in the day, but this one just seems more just like, I don't know, for this one, for the Hollywood, this is where we started seeing them doing, like, I think this was the year they did like fake parody trailers with all the wrestlers for 21. We saw the introduction of Money in the Bank. That was a huge deal for this pay-per-view. This pay-per-view felt a little different because you started seeing new stars come in and really take the main stage. So as we go over it, it did resonate from the Staples Center in Los Angeles. The card itself was not a bad card. There were several great matches on that card. And like we do every week on this show, we'll go over the card one by one. Obviously, around the panel, we'll go through the card and give our opinions on the matches, what we liked, what we didn't like on the card, what we didn't, what we thought overall. So as usual, I'll read off the card and then we'll go around the circle and everybody will go through the card themselves and just give their opinion on it. So we start off with a pre-show interpromotional battle royal. This was SmackDown versus Raw. Obviously, they were still in that stage of the two brands. Booker T won that one. Then you had a singles match to kick off the main show, which was Rey Mysterio versus Eddie Guerrero, who was actually tag partners at the time. I believe they were tag champions at the time that they had this singles match. Then you had the inaugural Money in the Bank ladder match that had Edge win it. And then with several interesting names in that match too. Then you had Undertaker versus Randy Orton. Then you had Trish Stratus versus Christy Hemme. Kurt Angle versus Shawn Michaels, by far probably one of the best matches on the card.
Yes.
Akibono versus Big Show, obviously.
That was match of the night. That was match of the
Oh
night.
yeah,
That one right there. Then you had John Cena versus JBL for the WWE title, and Batista versus Triple H for the World Heavyweight title. So as we go around the room, I guess we'll start with Connor. Connor, going through the card, what's your takeaways from this?
So as before we talking, a lot of these WrestleManias on this card, a lot of these WrestleManias that we'll be talking about tonight were my favorites of all time. This it's my favorite, but is one of my favorites. I'll first start off with the Money in the Bank. This was the person who won it, Edge. I feel like still to this day has the best Money in the Bank cash in of all time. He cashed in at New Year's resolution against John Cena, and John Cena held the belt for like 380 days, and he was the one who beat him. And then he came off that really good feud against Matt Hardy, which was one of the best feuds in WWE history. And there was a lot of interesting names in that, as Adam was saying. You had Jericho, Benjamin, Benoit. Well, this was his last WrestleMania. I could be wrong.
No, it isn't. It's Eddie's last WrestleMania.
Eddie's. I knew it was someone's last WrestleMania. And Kane was in it. This was the inaugural Money in the Bank match. I missed when Money in the Bank was at WrestleMania. I felt like it was. I liked it there. It felt bigger, and because it's WrestleMania. And the Undertaker and Randy Orton. That was a really, really good match. I just got through watching the WWE biography on Randy Orton, and one of the matches they talked about was Randy Orton and the Undertaker, and how the Legend Killer, how that was his character. And it was a really, really good match. I thought the story was really good. I believe Bob Orton had a lot to do in that story.
Yeah.
Trish Stratus and Christy Hemme only went 5 minutes. Not much to talk about there. The best match in the entire card for me was Kurt Angle and Shawn Michaels. I think it outdid both the World Championship matches personally. That was really, really, really good matches. That was a really good match. As I've said many times, Kurt Angle has the best facial reactions. This dude was crying in this match. He could not get the win. I've always enjoyed Kurt Angle's facial reactions, and especially as a heel, Kurt Angle has the best facial reactions. Funny we're talking about Kurt Angle, but yeah, this is my favorite match of the night. And we got John Cena and JBL. This was the first world championship that John Cena had won. And he beat JBL. JBL, I always say this when when MJF became the world became the world champion. I said that I wanted him to go on a JBL type run because JBL's run was a really, really good heel run. I feel like no one would, personally, for me as a kid, I hated him with that belt because he was a really good heel and he made me want to hate him. And he had a lot of good matches. Me as a kid, I thought he was never going to lose that belt. But Yeah, that, and then we have another person who wins their first world title, Batista, defeated Triple H, which was a really, really good match. I thought I love seeing Batista win the world title for the first time, and it really took off from there. His career. Yeah, for me, this was a really good WrestleMania. Of course, you have Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero. That was a really good match. But yeah, this was a really good WrestleMania.
Yeah, Amer, let's go through your take on the match card.
Yeah, this is an interesting WrestleMania. Looking back, I was going to comment that the couple of things did change, as you alluded to, Adam. It used to be up until this point, and it started to change over the last few years, the ones that we discussed last week. But WrestleMania used to be about, well, let's bring in the stars to kind of give a bit of a shine to the show. And now the whole tone of it has changed, and it hasn't gone back since. Now it's not like we need the stars. Now we are the stars, you know? And I think that's what I got out of this show, that, you know, not that we don't need Hollywood, but we are Hollywood, is kind of what they were trying to portray here. And I don't think they've given up on that since, you know? We are the superstars, and we can, you know, entertain you just as well as, you know, anybody else in Hollywood can. One thing I do notice with a lot of these WrestleManias is they do become a little bit of a blur to me, except for, you know, the odd match kind of here or there. I remember when I was listening to, you know, a lot of the Conrad podcasts. Some of them I can't listen to much anymore just because of all sorts of reasons. But they're just not as interesting to me. But Arn Anderson's podcast, when it first started, I remember listening to him because the guy's got a wealth of information. I enjoyed it, but it came to a point pretty quickly where every one of those podcasts started sounding the same. Because they would go back and they'd talk about, like, Unforgiven 2013 or, you know, No Mercy 2016. And I'm like, every single one sounded the same. It was all just a blur. And then I started to realize, yeah, you know what? A lot of these pay-per-views, it's just kind of the same thing in different, you know, Tetris pieces sort of thing. That's kind of what I get from this. That said, there's a lot of good to like on this show. There really is. The matches, as Connor kind of pointed out, I see kind of the ebbs and flows as we kind of go through. You know, Kurt Angle and Shawn Michaels is definitely one of my favorite matches. I watched that again a little while ago. Oh my gosh, like those two, that's your borderline dream match. 20 years ago, we talk about dream matches now in AEW and other places. It's just like that's your dream match for that time period as far as I'm concerned. And it has to be kind of sandwiched around those let me up matches, right? The women's match, poor Trish Stratus. And then you have the sumo match. I have no recollection. I don't know if anybody else remembers why they even thought that was anything other than the worst idea ever. I really have no recollection for that at all. Does anybody remember why they even bothered to do that?
You talk about the Trish Stratus, Christy.
No, I mean the sumo match.
Oh, I don't know. It was something about Big Show claiming to be a big man and being able to do anything. Plus, I think it was just like a cross promotion between Akibono's like sumo wrestling stuff and like Big Show. I don't know. Okay. I can't remember.
Yeah, I have zero recollection of that. The singles matches were really, really good. I liked what they did coming out of the Royal Rumble, because that was the Rumble, you remember, where Cena and Batista tied, and then Vince McMahon came out and tore both the squads just walking down the ring, channeling the spirit of Kevin Nash. And yeah, they were good matches. It was good to see Batista. You know, that was the whole thing where he did, you know, the thumbs up, thumbs down thing with Triple H as well. Yeah. And he really, really did come into his own. And I remember watching that Rumble back then and watching it again later and saying, you know, I know either Batista or Cena is going to win this. It was pretty much a foregone conclusion. But, you know, they kept it up towards the end, and those two guys really kind of made each other as kind of the stars to move up to that next level. So all in all, yeah, good show. And yeah, Undertaker, Randy Orton, you know, Mysterio, Guerrero. Yeah, I mean, you can't say enough good things about the action in this match. It had the story, it had the action, it was WrestleMania.
Yeah. Jason, let's go through the card and get your take on it.
Adam. Oh, okay. My turn. No, it's, I'll go back to, I missed the Money in the Bank ladder match being at WrestleMania as well. But one of the reasons I've read over the years they took it away is because it was stealing the spotlight from everything else. But I would, now that we have 2 days of WrestleMania, I would like to see them reincorporate that maybe in the night one. So if it's not taken away from your targeted main event, Randy Orton, the Legend Killer, great gimmick, biggest legend of them all. I'll tell you what I remember more from this WrestleMania than the card itself was the buildup. Kurt Angle and Shawn Michaels, the Rocker reunion, Kurt Angle taking on Marty Jannetty, bringing out Sherry Martel, the lead up to that, and then of course Batista winning the whole Royal Rumble thing, and then them trying to say that he was going to go to SmackDown and win that title, so the 3 remaining members of Evolution would rule the wrestling world, and of course he did the same thing they did to Randy Orton. He gave him the thumbs up, the thumbs down, and went on to beat Triple H at WrestleMania. But you look over some of it. Big Show and Akibono. That's one image I'll never get out of my head. Is Big Show dressed up like that? That was that was god awful. But Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero could go out there blindfolded and give you a better match than most people could then and now. If they're as well as they knew each other. But again, the card was solid, but the buildup is what I remember more from this one.
Yeah, no, definitely. This card to me, I remember this distinctly. I remember this was prime WWE with some good matches and was still in that whole ruthless aggression era, fresh off the Attitude Era, and you still had some of the legends in there. You still had Kurt Angle, who came in at the late of the Attitude Era. You still had Undertaker in there, who had been there for a long time. Obviously, you got all these guys in there. I mean, even JBL, who came in there, and APA, and and the Acolytes during that time. But this card in general, I'm with you, Jason. I just remember the build to a lot of these matches, particularly that Money in the Bank match. I mean, that's one thing you can't take away. This was a huge match, and it all stemmed from basically it was the brainchild of Chris Jericho versus storyline. He came up with this idea that he wanted to make a match where it's ladders and you have to grab a briefcase that guarantees you something. And I loved it. I loved the concept of it. And I remember that Raw when he was there and he was talking to Bischoff about it, and it was just building and building. And then you add all these other guys to it. With Shelton Benjamin, I knew you were going to get a good high flyer in the match. Chris Benoit, you were going to get a good grappler. Christian, you were going to get a sneaky little character. Kane, you had the big guy in there. And then Edge and Chris Jericho, obviously, the two of the biggest, I wouldn't say two of the biggest, but two of the main focused, heart-driven guys during that Attitude Era that had some of the good stories during that time. I thoroughly enjoyed that ladder match, especially some of the Shelton Benjamin moments in that match. The climbing up the running up the ladder and flipping to the outside. It was so amazing. Undertaker Randy Orton, that storyline in general was probably one of the best storylines for an Undertaker WrestleMania match I've seen in a long time. I mean, obviously you got this cocky young kid who comes in there thinking he's going to beat everybody, and you got to remember the year prior, he was with Evolution. They were wrestling against The Rock, and now he's WrestleMania after this, he's going against The Undertaker. So he's like, and then obviously later on, we'll talk about his feud with Triple H. So he's basically covering all his feuds with all the Attitude Era guys, Trish Stratus, Christy Hemme. This one was kind of a blur for me. I just know Trish was kind of like heelish during this time, kind of turning face. But Trish Stratus never disappointed me in the ring. Always loved watching her perform. Kurt Angle versus Shawn Michaels, by far match of the night for me. Just great technical wrestling. Yeah. Again, reason why you saw Shawn as Mr. WrestleMania and Kurt Angle as the Olympic gold medalist who came in at the perfect time to pretty much kickstart in the Attitude Era and carry through. Again, yes, Akibono, Big Show. I'm pretty much obsolete from that. John Cena, seeing John Cena winning his first title after that long run of Thugonomics and the U.S. title run. So now he wins the big title, and now he changed that to spinner title. And I'll get into that later because I can go on a whole rant about how I didn't like spinner titles. And then obviously Batista, Leviathan from the OVW days, beats Triple H, his former leader in Evolution, for the World's Heavyweight Championship. And that was crazy because you kind of saw a lot of those guys from OVW shine on this card that graduated in that 2002 class. You know, you had Shelton Benjamin in that class who shined in that ladder match. You had Randy Orton against The Undertaker. You had John Cena win a title. You had Batista win a title. So I think overall this card was good for a lot of the guys that graduated in that 2002 OVW class.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm not real sure. I know JBL held the title for a good amount of time, but one of the tidbits on why they actually split up the APA, I'm not sure if you guys remember or not, but Ron Simmons' wife actually was diagnosed with cancer, and he did not want to go home. He wanted to continue to work, and they finally told him it was not an option. He needed to go home and take care of his family, and they split the two, and JBL became JBL.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, but I think that was a good run for him as the John Bradshaw Layfield character.
Oh, it was. I mean, he made
because I feel like that was almost not 100%, but maybe 95% really him in character performing on TV, because that's really how he is in person.
Yeah, he's still on Fox Business.
Yeah, if you listen to his podcast or see him on Fox Business, that's exactly how he is in person.
And I will tell you, I know they haven't done it in a while, but that JBL and Cole podcast they did for a while, I loved it. I was really upset when they quit doing that podcast. They had good chemistry, and it wasn't what you heard on SmackDown as far as the commentating team. It was just two friends butting heads and agreeing about certain issues of going on in the world, and occasional little bit of wrestling thrown in. I really enjoyed listening to them.
Right. So before we move on, any last takes from WrestleMania 20 that anyone wants to get in?
21. Yeah, you mentioned the transition. A couple of things that I had to refresh my memory about is we had some interesting segments kind of in between the matches, talking about, where we had come from and now where we've been. This is the one where Hulk Hogan showed up again, right, to rescue Eugene from the evil Muhammad Hassan. So that was in this WrestleMania. And also we had Stone Cold in Piper's Pit, right? So we weren't really leaving the legends behind. We were just kind of transitioning, right, to the new era. So I'd forgotten about those things, but yeah.
Is this the WrestleMania that had the box of chocolates?
Yes.
Yeah.
I used to always look forward to the promotional stuff, like even at WrestleMania, especially like the Royal Rumble that year. I like the Royal Rumble women, like they were all in the how would I put it? Like they were all in like in a parking lot or whatever. And I really liked the promotional stuff for that and the box of chocolate stuff. Always stuck out to me. They got that from what was the movie?
Forrest Gump.
Forrest Gump, yeah.
Yeah, no, this overall this card was a decent card. Obviously they went all out with the Hollywood theme. And obviously there was a lot of good matches, good storytelling. As we move on to WrestleMania 22. Again, this one I remember distinctly because it took place in my home city, near Chicago. When I was living there, I actually went to the Raw after this one happened on in 2006. I remember because the night after this one, Umaga, aka Jamal, returned, and they had the whole storyline with Cena, Triple H, and Edge. So it was very fun. And it was also just a really fun night to see everybody there. But this card, very interesting card indeed. A lot of good matches, a lot of interesting storylines in this one. Obviously, for the pre-show, you had a Battle Royal, again, an interpromotional one, again, still doing the whole SmackDown Raw. That would last for a while. Then you had Big Show and Kane defend the World Tag Team titles against Chris Masters and Carlito, which was a very underrated tag team. I thoroughly enjoyed Carlito and Chris Masters as a tag team. Then you had the following Money in the Bank ladder match with Rob Van Dam, Bobby Lashley, Finlay, Matt Hardy, Ric Flair, and Shelton Benjamin against
Shelton's one of these is not like the other.
Yeah. Exactly, and we'll get into that. Obviously, why would they put someone like that in that match? Anyways, JBL wrestling Chris Benoit for the U.S. title. This is when he was actually with Jillian Hall at the time. She was his valet. Then you had Edge versus Mick Foley in a hardcore match. Probably one of the most brutal matches I've ever seen on a WrestleMania card. Not as bad as some other death matches and street fights and Texas death matches we've seen, but still. Then you kind of had a throwaway with the Boogeyman versus Booker T and Queen Charmel. Then you had Mickie James wrestle Trish Stratus for the women's title. The Undertaker versus Mark Henry in a casket match. Shawn Michaels versus Vince McMahon in a no-holds-barred match. Rey Mysterio winning the triple threat match for the World Heavyweight title against Kurt Angle and Randy Orton. Then you had Tori Wilson against Candice Michelle in a Playboy pillow fight match. Yes, we're going to see a theme here for the next couple of WrestleManias, folks. And then finally, you had John Cena fight Triple H for the WWE title. Connor, your take from this card and what you thought of it.
Now, this is one of my favorite WrestleManias. And it's because of one person. It's because of Jim Ross. But I'll explain that in a minute. But the Money in the Bank ladder match I thought was really good, except for one person being in it. Rob Van Dam won the match. Which he had won everything, tag, inter, United States. He had done everything except go for the big title, which this is the beginning of him doing that. He wins the Money in the Bank and then makes his own custom Money in the Bank briefcase, the RVD, which I always thought was really cool. We had Bobby Lashley in there, Finlay, Matt Hardy, Benjamin. Benjamin in there 2 years in a row. He was in there in 25 as well. He had I think if you go back and look at a lot of the best Money in the Bank moments, we'll see Benjamin in just about all of them. And Ric Flair, I think he got injured during the match and then he left. But we got JBL and Benoit. That was a pretty good match. Edge and Mick Foley was one of my favorite matches of the entire night. I love the story. At that time, Edge had a lot of really good stories. With Matt Hardy and John Cena and Mick Foley. I thought it was a really good match. The spot of the entire night for me was that flaming table spot. That's a moment that I'll never forget from my childhood. Really, really good match. Mickie James and Trish Stratus was really good, I thought, too. Was the only really serious women's match in the entire card. But the fans were really behind Mickie James in this. And I thought this is the first time in WWE, not maybe the first time, but like they were not really going for the face. They were really going for the heel. And they were all pulling for Mickie James. And I remember Jim Ross mentioning that he doesn't know what he said that he doesn't know what's up with the fans tonight, but they're on something tonight. I don't know what's wrong with the fans. But at that time, it wasn't really known. The Undertaker and Mark Henry in a casket match. I don't remember too much about that, but I know the Undertaker won the match. The Boogeyman and Booker T, that was whatever.
Totally whatever.
I've talked about the Boogeyman a few times. He's a sick human being. If anyone's ever met him, like those worms are really totally real, and it's a pain to clean up. That's all I'll say. Shawn Michaels Vince McMahon went 18 minutes and 22 seconds. It was a really hardcore brawling match. It was whatever that match. Vince got his ass kicked in that match though.
Mm-hmm.
And we got Rey Mysterio, Kurt Angle, and Randy Orton was one of my favorite matches of the entire night. Rey Mysterio he won his first World Heavyweight Championship in WWE against Kurt Angle and Randy Orton. Which again, a lot of OVW guys on this card. Randy Orton, he didn't win, but he really stuck out in this match. Tori Wilson and Candice Michelle, well, that was whatever you want to make it out to be. There's a lot of those coming up. And John Cena versus Triple H for the WWE Championship. I really love Johnson's entrance. I believe this is the one where he came in with the car and he smashed through the glass. I thought it was really cool. But a lot of these WrestleManias, the reason I say that they're my favorite is because of Jim Ross. His commentating as a kid, really, like watching these matches, it really made me more emotional into the matches then like the match could have sucked, and then his voice would have made me enjoy the match still. Like the match could suck, and as long as Jim Ross was commentating the match and really getting into it, I would enjoy the match. My favorite matches out of this whole entire WrestleMania: Edge, Mick Foley, Triple Threat, John Cena, Triple H. The Money in the Bank was good. Yeah. So this WrestleMania was really good. My favorite WrestleMania of all time is the next one, actually, 23. This is in my top 10 of WrestleManias for me personally. Probably because when I like this is when I was growing up watching wrestling. Like this is WrestleManias I lived through. So yeah, I thought it was really good.
All right, Amer, your take on the card?
Yeah, I find myself with not a whole lot to add to what Connor said. This is one where you kind of look. I look back at it and I say, yeah, I know that there were some really, really good matches on this, but as a card overall, it really kind of falls in line with a lot of those kind of 7, 8, 9 WrestleManias for me. That's just kind of how I see it. Yeah, definitely the Edge Mick Foley match was the highlight for me on my side. I look back at it, and I look back at a lot of the stuff that Mick Foley has done, including this, and I kind of just kind of go like this, like, oh boy. Gee, Mick, you really set it up for a lot of the crazy stuff that people are doing now, right? And I wish today guys would stop and just say, just because I can doesn't mean I should. And unfortunately, that's kind of the way the wrestling has gone. And, this is me, old man yelling at clouds sort of thing. But I really wish the guys would focus more on the psychology, because Foley did, right? He did a lot of that crazy stuff because he felt that that's what he needed to be unique. Now, with everybody doing it, I feel a lot of times the way everybody's doing it, it's not unique. You're just like everybody else. So, whatever. It is what it is. Again, I'll stop yelling at the clouds. Mickie James and Trish Stratus, I believe this is the one where Mickie kind of did the thing, right? Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, let's leave it that. Yeah. And everybody's whoa.
It is edited out of a lot of WWE media now.
Yes.
It's edited out, but when you watch it live, it happens.
Yeah.
It happens.
Yeah. And everybody knows, right? Anybody who's going to go back and watch it knows. At least, for people of our age. I don't know about people of the next generation. I'd love to see about that. But yeah, I did like seeing Mickie James kind of come into her own and establish herself. We kind of see the beginning of, maybe not the Divas Revolution or anything like that, but, you can kind of see women's wrestling, take a step up. It started with Trish having some great matches with Lita and also with Victoria. Just because I don't have a whole lot to throw in about the rest of the card that Connor didn't already say, I'll just throw in like a quick anecdote. True story. I have been in Trish Stratus's bedroom with her alone. Yeah, true story. I swear on my kids. Okay. Nothing happened, of course, with this computer stuff and that, but I was in her bedroom alone. Anyway, and I remember it was kind of funny. I went to her house and, doing all of the things that I was doing. And, as she answers the door, she's on the phone and she's like, okay, bye, Lisa. And I didn't realize at the time, but as we were talking and chatting later, that was Lisa Marie Varon, Victoria, that she was talking to. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's cool. Mm-hmm. So we chatted about like a whole bunch of things about what had happened at WrestleMania 18, after her having to go out in the ladies match after The Rock and Hogan and what a terrible position that was in and all of that. And I remember thinking, and from the things that she said, it's like, boy, I wish this woman could get more good quality opponents. She's got Lita, she's got Victoria, but man, just 3 or 4 more could really take it up to the next level. And I remember thinking that Mickie James was definitely a standout at this point. With the other matches, Connor kind of basically said what needed to be said. I'll move on. Jason.
Awesome. Yeah, Jason.
Well, first off, I'll back on what Connor was talking about, with the childhood and Jim Ross. if you go back and put it in your Google machine, or if it's on the network or YouTube, wherever it may be, I used to love as a kid listening to David Crockett because he was so into it. I mean, he would make a squash match feel like a main event. He would be screaming, especially when the bad guys would come out and start beating up on the good guys. You would think he was getting ready to take the headset off and go run in the ring and help somebody. I mean, he was great to listen to. Now, by today's standards, a lot of people probably wouldn't like him, but I mean, for back then, like I said, he really made it exciting. RVD winning the Money in the Bank ladder match, like I said, you touched on a little bit. Flair, they did the injury angle with him, and he came back out to finish the match. I'm not sure if that was an angle, if he was actually really hurt. I'd venture to say it was probably an angle, just because he was not able to do the stuff the rest of those guys were, and then get the big pop coming back out. Of course, Edge and Mick Foley, everybody remembers that table spot. That'll go down in history for a long time of being played over and over again with WrestleMania highlights. And I'm going to skip over the women's match for just a second. I'm like the rest of you. I don't remember The Undertaker and Mark Henry.
Yeah,
I just don't. Shawn Michaels and Vince McMahon. This was Vince McMahon's tour of I'm going to wrestle everybody at a WrestleMania from the Attitude Era that had an issue with me on TV. Shortly, we will get him and Bret Hart in one of the upcoming WrestleManias. Rey Mysterio, very, very heartwarming, for him to win the title. This was after Eddie's death, for them to let him win the Royal Rumble. And
right.
still in an era where Vince did not care for the little guy too much, but to put him over like that, in tribute to Eddie, that was great. I thought a great heartfelt moment. The last two matches, Cena was Cena's time. I don't really remember the match, to be quite honest with you. My favorite thing out of the whole night, I'm sure it wasn't match of the night by any stretch, was Mickie James winning the championship.
Yes.
And that's on a personal level. I had known her at this point for about 8 years.
Oh, wow.
Watched her work her way through
Did you go into a bedroom with her alone?
Kind of pro wrestling. What's that, Connor?
Did you go into a bedroom with her alone and talk about wrestling?
No, but I was in a dressing room with her. And we'll just leave it at that.
Sure.
That's where I met her, was at the bar. But anyway, while she was working there and we were working together, I watched her start at Kaida Pro Wrestling, which was based here in Richmond. I'm not sure if it's still around or not. It was a training school. Watched her go on to Maryland Championship Wrestling. And then, she texted me one night. She goes, "Hey, do you watch TNA? The pay? That's when it was still pay-per-view. $10 for $9.99 every Wednesday or Thursday, whatever day it was on." And I'm like, "I do sometimes." Why? She was like, "Make sure you watch it." And that's when she debuted as part of Raven's flock as Alexis Lurie, which was what she was using on the independent circuit. And then, she said the whole time when she was training, she'd be watching. She goes, "I'm going to be there someday." You think, yeah, okay, whatever. But, it was always like, "Go ahead, girl, get it. Dream big, do what you got to do." And so when I saw her appear, she got signed, and then to see her actually, debut on Raw. When my daughter passed away, she actually did reach out to me. I talked to her for a long time on the phone. She is one of the sweetest people you will ever meet. And one of the conversations we had, I mean, like, so you can't see it because of the background I got, but I've got a ton of figures in this room. And we were talking one night, and I'm like, "Hey, what would you charge me to mail you a figure and autograph it for me?" She's like, "Dumbass, just send it to me." And I'm like,
"Wow."
I'm like, "Yes, ma'am. What's your address?" And so here's the one. I'd had it for a while, but to my favorite MC and DJ of all time, love Mickie James.
Oh, that's really cool.
That is awesome. Yeah.
So, like I said, that was on a personal level for me. I love Mickie to death. A nicer person you will not find.
Yeah, I totally agree. And actually, before I give my review, I actually met Mickie James. So it was during 2016. WWE was in town in Chicago while I was still living there. They were doing shows, and we were doing a charity event for the organization I was with up there for a while. And we were at a bar. I believe it was called Joe's Live was the bar. And we were doing an event, and all of a sudden, I found out that her and Bailey and someone else from WWE had shown up to just hang out. They were there just for the bar, but then they ended up hanging out with all of us for the charity. And I was up in VIP, and I'm getting a drink, and I look, and it's Mickie James. I go, "Oh, hey, Mickie James." She goes, "Yeah." And I go, "Hey, big fan. Can I get a picture?" She goes, "Yeah, sure." I go, "Well, welcome to our charity event." And she was really cool. She talked with us, and she was really, laid back and really cool. And we were talking about charity stuff and all that stuff. So I can contest with Jason that she is the sweetest person you will ever meet, and just really kind-hearted.
I'll give you a little backstory on something funny. She swore up and down when she first started doing it that she would never get an enhancement done. And she said that she was going to wrestle with what she had. And she came back into town and she came in the bar to see everybody. And I just kind of looked at her and grinned. I said, I hear you in town to get something done. She kind of ducked her head and she goes, well, let me tell you what happened. I said, are they making you do it? She goes, no, nobody's making me do anything. She said when she was wrestling, a lot of the stuff she wrestled in was stuff she wore at the bar. We all kind of got a chuckle out of that. But, one of the things that she was wearing that, would tie up in the back that come down this way, she said she come off the ropes one night and did a Hurricane Rana. And she turned around and the referee was holding one of those things that you can put in your top. And he goes, is this yours? And she said she was so embarrassed. She said that, she goes, all right, I'll get them done.
That's funny. Man. Yeah, no, what a great person she is. But yeah, no, this card in general, it was great. And yeah, it was great to see Mickey go over. I love that storyline of the obsessed fan finally, and then beating Trish Stratus, someone big like Trish Stratus. I think that was a great overdue for someone like Mickey James, a fresh start for the women's division. Obviously, you can't say much about that Money in the Bank ladder match other than, Rob Van Dam winning it and finally being put on that pedestal. And, unfortunately, we saw what happened to him after he won the title and all those issues, and obviously JBL and Chris Benoit had a decent match, could have gone a little longer. A couple of the other matches I'll go over. Undertaker, Mark Henry. I do remember that match because again, I'm an Undertaker mark. I'm like Dave LaGreca. I love Undertaker. But I do remember the moment when the spot where he jumped over the top rope over the casket to land on Mark Henry on the outside. That was pretty thrilling. The Shawn Michaels Vince McMahon storyline I thought was awesome to see Shawn do the elbow off the top rope through Vince McMahon in the garbage can, which also led the story to the reformation of DX, which was very exciting for me to see. And then obviously Rey Mysterio winning the world title. I was a huge Rey mark back in 2006, obviously, because I was a big Eddie Guerrero fan. I even wore my I'm Your Poppy shirt to the Raw after this WrestleMania. So very, very fun. And I wasn't the only one. A lot of people in the crowd, we were all wearing our Eddie Guerrero stuff. And then obviously John Cena, Triple H, and I think like Jason said, or Amer, you guys, one of you said this was the John Cena tour. This was basically from 2005, pretty much almost up to 2012. 2013 was the John Cena show for WWE, and he was winning titles left and right, and he was basically almost headlining every WrestleMania that there was between this time. But Triple H and John Cena had great chemistry in the ring, obviously why they worked together so much. I thoroughly enjoyed that feud. It was, like I said, you incorporated a lot of other people in it. Edge got incorporated into it. And then obviously, after Triple H basically moved on from that feud, he formed with DX, and then Edge and John Cena had their little thing until 2007. So overall, 22 wasn't a bad WrestleMania. I did enjoy the Monday night after. Before we move on, are there any final thoughts on this WrestleMania 22?
I know there was one WrestleManias. There's one, Ron Simmons. It could be this one. It could be 20. I think it was 23. But it was Gene Okerlund and Mae Young they were doing something, and then Ron Simmons saw him. He said, "Damn."
I think it might have been the next one.
I think it's 23.
Yeah. Moving on, we'll move on to WrestleMania 23. And obviously, as you guys see every week, I do the logos behind me. I honestly think 21 through 23 had some really cool logos. And then, obviously when we get to 24, that's when we start seeing the Roman numerals again. But I honestly thought the logos for 21 through 23 were kind of cool. They were kind of like in your face, kind of like sharp looking logos. But for 23, this happened in 2007 and took place in Detroit. It took place at Ford Field in Detroit, Michigan. This was an interesting card. Let me just say that. A lot of interesting matchups with a lot of interesting stipulations. Obviously, yeah, you still had a lot of the Attitude Era guys still going through it. But at this point, then you had like ECW guys going, and then you had, SmackDown, then you had Raw. So you had a lot of intricate parts moving in this WrestleMania. The card is as follows. The first match was Ric Flair and Carlito against Gregory Helms and Chavo in a lumberjack match. That was the pre-show match. And then obviously the first match off the bat here was the Money in the Bank ladder match with Mr. Kennedy winning it, and involved CM Punk, Randy Orton, Finlay, Matt Hardy, King Booker, Jeff Hardy, and Edge. And just a little tidbit: does anybody remember CM Punk's original cameo in a previous WrestleMania that we just talked about?
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. Yep, CM Punk was one of the gangsters riding the car for John Cena's entrance at WrestleMania 22.
Yeah, it's kind of like DDP driving the Cadillac for Honky Tonk all them years ago.
Yep.
Yeah. So that was funny to now, a year later, he's in Money in the Bank. And then the next match was the Great Khali versus Kane. One of my least favorite big man matches. The next one, actually, I thoroughly enjoyed. Wish it was longer. Chris Benoit against MVP for the U.S. title. I wish that was a longer match because it was such a good match. Then you had Undertaker beat Batista for the World Heavyweight Championship. Again, another great match on that card. And then again, here's where I say you had a lot of intricate parts with the rosters. You had the ECW originals, which included Rob Van Dam, Tommy Dreamer, Sabu, and Sandman, against the New Breed, which included Elijah Burke, who I think we have interviewed on here, against Elijah Burke, Marcus Von Core, Matt Stryker back when he was a wrestler, and Kevin Thorne. Then you had Bobby Lashley representing Donald Trump, fight Umaga representing Mr. McMahon in a hair versus hair match with Stone Cold as special guest referee. Then you had Melina defend the women's title against Ashley Massaro. And then John Cena, again, defending his WWE title against Shawn Michaels. Connor, your takeaway from this card and what you thought of it.
First match I'll go over is the Money in the Bank. This is probably the most forgettable winners of the Money in the Bank. And this match is really good. The spot for me was when Jeff Hardy went from the ladder. Like, it was the first time, to me at least, that the ladder broke. Jeff Hardy has a lot of crazy spots. And I always felt that was really cool. That was something that I'll always remember from this WrestleMania. You had CM Punk in there, King Booker, Edge. Benoit and MVP was really, really good. I agree it should have went longer. It only went 9 minutes and 15 seconds.
Yeah, it's
a really good match. The Undertaker and Batista was a really, really, really good match. I actually remember every match from the next pay-per-view, Backlash. After this pay-per-view, I remember every match. They had a match here, and they had a match at Backlash, which ended pretty chaotically. But the Undertaker and Batista had a really, really good match and a really good feud. The ECW Originals against New Breed was very interesting. The ECW Originals are RVD, Dreamer, Sabu, Sandman. And one name that really sticks out is, I don't call him by this name, but Monty Brown, Marcus Carvon, whatever they got him called here. I always loved Monty Brown. I feel like he could have been what Big E is right. Well, wrestling right now, but he could have been a big star. He was really, really good in TNA. I always enjoyed his matches with the Biss and a lot of those Monster Ball matches he was in. I always liked Monty Brown.
Yeah, he was fantastic in TNA.
I really thought that he could have been a big, big star. But you got Bobby Lashley versus Umaga, one of my favorite matches on this entire show. That was really funny. And Bobby Lashley is another good one. This is his first WrestleMania. I've always loved Bobby Lashley, from MMA to wrestling to everything he does. Thought this was a pretty good match in Manga and Bobby Lashley. Melina and Ashley, I don't remember too much about this match. It only went 3 minutes and 40 seconds, so that's probably why. But Ashley, I always liked her wrestling. She was always really, really good in the ring, very unique. Around this time, no one was doing what she was doing, so she was very unique and very doing something to make herself stand out. And then the main event, John Cena and Shawn Michaels. I say that this is one of my favorite WrestleManias was because of this match and Jim Ross. Jim Ross, like a lot of these WrestleManias, a lot of these moments, I remember because of Jim Ross. His commentating. As Dusty Rhodes said, that Jim Ross is someone that'll make you cry. How do you say it? I'll have to go back and listen to that. Dusty Rhodes was like, he'll make you cry, mad, sad. He'll make you want to punch the TV. Like, he's the type of guy that if you want someone to sell your pay-per-view, he will do it. And this is a really good match, John Cena and Shawn Michaels. John Cena won by submission. It was a back-and-forth match. The match was the longest match on the entire show, 28 minutes and 20 seconds. It was really a back-and-forth match. I actually thought Shawn Michaels could have won it there. But John Cena, of course, won. This is one of my favorite WrestleManias. A lot of these are my favorite WrestleManias also because of the music. I always enjoyed after the show was over that they would recap the entire show with the highlights. They have really cool music. But growing up watching this, I enjoyed this WrestleMania. So I got to.
Yeah, Amer, how about you? Over the card and what's your takes from it?
Yeah, again, I fall in line with a lot of what Connor said. It's an absolute crime that Benoit and MVP did not get more time. I remember that match, and I'm just like, let these guys go for another 10 minutes. I mean, like that was great. That was one that I really do remember. Undertaker Batista, that's an underrated match. I think it stands out a lot more given the horrible big man match that we had previously, right? With Great Khali against Kane. Isn't it good that Great Khali left before Omos was a thing? Because Vince would have done that, right? And gosh, I just can't even imagine, being subjected to that. This was a time where I haven't really gotten a good read on this, despite listening to, some of the things that, Bruce Pritchard and Jim Ross have talked about at the time. The whole thing about ECW, you guys are probably paying more attention to this, Connor. You certainly, I'm sure, were rather more than I was. Does this predate Do-Rag Vince McMahon as ECW champion?
This is actually the launching pad for Vince McMahon's Do-Rag. So right, because it was the hair versus hair match. After Bobby Lashley beat it, he wore the Do-Rag. And he's like, I'm going to do everything I can to make Bobby Lashley's life a living hell. And that's when he had like the do-rag and everything like that.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. It didn't click in my mind. But I never really got a good feel. Like, they're kind of playing hokey pokey with, are they serious about making ECW a real thing? It seems like every week, every hour, every minute, Vince was like, okay, let's really go hard with ECW, and then it's like, I don't really care about ECW. And it seemed like they were just kind of playing out the string because they had TV commitments for, whatever channel they were on. Like, well, let's, just do whatever. And like a lot of things, kind of like it was with the NWO back around WrestleMania 18 time, seemed like a good idea. Vince had his heart in it, and then after a while, he just kind of lost interest. And which is really a shame because, who knows what they could have done with it. But the whole ECW thing just seemed kind of snake bit to me. During that whole time. But it did give us Do-Rag Vince, and that's what came out of this. Stone Cold was obviously the best part of that whole, Lashley Umaga match. Much like, the whole Goldberg Lesnar thing, like nobody cared about those guys at WrestleMania 20, right? But everybody was there to see, Stone Cold, do his thing. And, that never gets old. And fingers crossed, maybe we'll see that this year. Who knows? We'll have to see. Cena and Shawn Michaels, it's interesting. I really feel that this is a match where Cena was the guy. He was like kind of the anointed one in a sense. But I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I feel that this is the match that really made John Cena the guy. In my mind, when Shawn Michaels made him look as good as Shawn Michaels can, that to me is what really made he turned him into Super Cena and all of that kind of stuff, and so you got to take the bad with the good. But I think this is a match that really made John Cena, in my opinion, and took him to that next level. That's my thought.
Great, yeah, Amer, your take on the card and what you thought.
I just gave it. You mean Jason?
Oh, I'm sorry, Jason.
Well, I mean, I'll just touch base on a couple of things real quick, then get down to the main event. This was not one of my favorite ladder matches, but King Booker was one of my favorite gimmicks he did. He put so much into that, and Queen Charmel, they were great. They were great to watch.
They were great.
Benoit and MVP. I mean, I'm in complete agreement with you. They should have gave him longer. MVP is very underrated in my opinion. The stuff he did with Matt Hardy was phenomenal. Some of the other matches he always had a decent match. And I love the Hurt Business. I wish they would put him back with Bobby Lashley because I like Bobby Lashley, but he is not a talker, and MVP is. And I think with what they're trying to do with Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits, you can only move up with MVP there on your side. One of the few times we saw the Undertaker actually win the title.
Yes.
What was he, 6-time champion, I believe?
I think this is the only time he won it at WrestleMania.
WrestleMania, yeah. Like for a 30-year career and only 6 titles, that tells you a lot about the character. He just didn't need it. And then kind of goes back to the whole Piper thing. While Piper never wanted it, if you put it on him, you gotta take it off of him somehow. And it left a lot to be open with the Undertaker if he didn't have the title. Melina, I thought was underrated. I thought she was fairly good in the ring. She wasn't as good as some of the other ones, especially what we see now, but she was definitely serviceable. Had good matches with Trish, had good matches with Mickey. And then Bobby Lashley with Umaga, big man match, typical. Goes back to what they said about Vince all for all those years, that Vince wouldn't ask anybody to do something that he would not do. Yes. And you already knew going in he was going to be the one getting his head shaved. And I remember, the angles leading up to that. If I remember right, Trump was on TV for about 2 months leading up to that. The whole, he bought Monday Night Raw and Vince wanted it back, blah, 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 blah. And then they got to the match there. And you get to the title, Shawn Michaels at this time knew he was going to be winding it down. He wasn't sure how much longer he had left. He wasn't going to lay down for just anybody, but he knew what his role was at this point in his career. And it was to go out and make people like John Cena look like $1 million. And that's exactly what he did. And if you go back, I would dare anybody to find me a better John Cena match than this one.
You won't.
No, and I agree. I think overall this was Cena's best WrestleMania match against Shawn Michaels. Obviously, it's that generational thing of Shawn Michaels being the young kid, but still going strong at what he was doing, even if he wasn't 100% anymore. And like you said, Jason, is more so him winding down his career. What can he do to help the next generation of WWE wrestlers coming in? And I think he put on a hell of a show. I think you're never going to get a disappointing Shawn Michaels match, minus what we saw with him and Triple H against the Brothers of Destruction. We'll talk about that later. But no, you will.
It didn't happen. That match didn't happen.
It did. That's what I'm saying. Like that might have been it. That might have been the moment where you're like, okay, maybe this wasn't a good idea. But I'm saying that, and if anybody watches, documentaries or series on Peacocks, they had the one series where they covered certain stuff in the Ruthless Aggression era. And one of the episodes was the rebirth of Shawn Michaels, and basically talk about him coming back during that whole Ruthless Aggression era in 2002 after he took the 4 years off, and basically came back to the ring and kind of rejuvenated his career and his life. And this match alone shows that he could still go strong. But the overall card for this WrestleMania, it wasn't too bad. I could give or take a lot of the matches. The Money in the Bank ladder match wasn't the best one, obviously, I don't think. Honestly, it was surprising. It was one of those moments where it's surprising to see who won, and you start seeing that lately of, oh my God, didn't think they would win the Money in the Bank, but they did. Mr. Kennedy, again, if anybody knows the story of Mr. Kennedy, what happened when he won this title, but they thought he was legitimately hurt. So they had to find a way to get it off of him, the briefcase. So they had Edge win it from him because they thought Kennedy was legitimately hurt for a long time. And that kind of changed the plans when it turns out it wasn't anything serious. It was just a hiccup that Kennedy could have still gotten fixed up and continued doing Money in the Bank. So it's also an unfortunate Mr. Money in the Bank situation. Like we said, Undertaker, Batista, not much to say about that feud or that match. Undertaker's going to do Undertaker things. And it was one of the better feuds he had later in his career. Obviously, you had the ECW brand on there. And Melina, obviously one of my favorites. I enjoyed her personality in the ring. I enjoyed her entrances, as many other men did. But I thoroughly enjoyed her run in WWE and everything she's done since then. But overall, a decent card, not too bad. Again, there's some matches that could give or take. Before we move on, are there any final words on WrestleMania 23?
Well, not so much on the card itself, but one thing we didn't touch on with the ECW contingent, one of the things that I've heard for years was, and I've heard on Bruce's podcast him vehemently deny it, was the reason that Vince brought it back was because he was tired of hearing the letters chanted at his show, and he wanted to basically give people a bad taste in their mouth for it, which you don't know if it's true or not. But what makes that hold credibility for me is when Triple H went out with his heart issue and Bruce and Vince took over NXT, what were they doing? They were chanting NXT at all the big shows, and he takes it and he turns it into NXT 2.0 and bringing gimmicks in, that would have, like Chase U and the Mafia guys, that would have been stuff that you did back in the 80s. And I'm like, oh, maybe there is credence to this story after all. And of course, you see Shawn and Triple H, are trying to put it back to what it was before Vince and Bruce came in and did whatever they did to it. But because NXT went from phenomenal to damn near unwatchable. And, when Triple H went out. So, like I said, I'd heard that story for years that the only reason he revived ECW as a developmental brand was to basically put a bad taste in people's mouth for it.
Yeah, probably Paul Heyman. Sorry, Adam, but probably also to just shut Paul Heyman up, because Paul Heyman would always flap his mouth every once in a while. You should bring back ECW, sir. Right? And so one day he's like, "Yeah, fine, we'll do it, and I'll show all of you." Yeah. So that does make perfect sense.
Which I feel like, because Paul Heyman was in charge of it at first. I remember. He was the one that picked CM Punk. Like that's who he wanted. I feel like
which they have said that really hurt CM Punk there for a while because Vince got tired of hearing his name.
Yep.
Yeah, he's someone that that's why I take a lot motivation from CM Punk, is because they said he would never make it to the main roster. He'd never win a world title. He'd never do this and never do that. And he did it all of it, and flipping off to people that said he'd never do it. But,
I think another take from that too with the ECW. I think it was just something to cash in on for Vince as well, because up to that point they were still doing the one night stands for ECW. They had one in 05, and then they had one in 06. So in order to continue that, I think it was a combination of like what Jason said was to pretty much put the nail in the coffin of it, to rub it in people's faces, but also get some more cash flow out of it, because he knew people that were big ECW people would pay for that product.
Yeah. I thought first when I brought it back, it was pretty good because Paul Heyman was in charge of it a little bit, and they had the old set. But once they put it into a WWE format and they put it into like a WWE arena type, that was it. Like that's not ECW. That's a manufactured ECW. Watered down, like that's not easy. That's just WWE watered down version.
Yeah, that and the fact that they put it on Sci-Fi and was bringing out, Kevin Thorne as whatever the vampire character and then the zombie character, and
That's
trying to get on Sci-Fi's good graces. It was just like, there's not a lot of wrestling that I will turn off, but yeah, I turned it off.
It was,
Yeah.
there's something.
Yeah, so definitely an interesting retrospect on the WWE's take on the ECW. But moving along, we are now moving on to WrestleMania 24, which had probably a really cool logo. I thoroughly enjoyed their logo with the big sun because it took place in Florida. And again, we see the Roman numerals come back for this logo. But this pay-per-view took place in 2008. It took place at the Florida Citrus Dome, or Florida Citrus Bowl, more so known to host college football than anything else, but also hosted a lot of big events, but more so known for college football games. But this was a big one for WWE. Obviously, because they brought in celebrity, well, not a celebrity, but a big mainstream media name in Floyd Mayweather. And then obviously being outside, you had that feel going, and it's beautiful in Florida for the most part during April. So this was probably a smart move on them. There was, I believe, I can't remember if there was okay. So there was a pre-show match. I almost forgot that there was. There was a battle royal to determine the number one contender for the ECW title, which was won by Kane during the pre-show. The main show.
When you think ECW, you think Kane.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what you think. And obviously he eliminated Mark Henry because, again, when you think ECW, you think Mark Henry.
Oh, yeah.
But the first match on the main card was JBL against Finlay in a Belfast brawl match. This is when Finlay had his little "let's fight," little stage. Then you had CM Punk win the Money in the Bank ladder match, his one of two. We'll get to the one following year. But also in that match had Shelton Benjamin, Chris Jericho, Carlito, MVP, Mr. Kennedy, John Morrison. Little tidbit in that match. We saw the return of Matt Hardy in that match. Matt was on the sidelines for a bit. I couldn't remember if it was an injury or storyline wise, but he was feuding with MVP, and he came back and basically kind of cost MVP the match as well. Then you had the Battle for Brand Supremacy match between Batista and Umaga. Man, 2 WrestleManias in a row, and they just buried Umaga on a WrestleMania show. Then obviously you had the 11-second ECW Championship match with Kane against Chavo Guerrero. And then obviously the match everybody remembers from this pay-per-view, obviously the one that Mr. Jason is pertaining to in his background, Shawn Michaels against Ric Flair in the career-threatening match. Then you had Beth Phoenix and Melina against Maria and Ashley in a Playboy Bunny Mania Lumberjill match. Doing great, WWE, yeah. Then you had a triple threat match for the WWE title with Randy Orton defending against Triple H, John Cena. Then you had Floyd Money Mayweather go against Big Show in a no DQ match, which smart move. And then finally you had the main event, which was the right move, Undertaker wrestling Edge for the World Heavyweight Championship. Connor, what's your takeaway from WrestleMania 24?
So this one was one of my favorites as well. Let's see. And this one I agree as well. It has a really good logo, a really big stage. Maybe think of WrestleMania, what was it, 33? Kind of maybe think of that a little bit. This was also WrestleMania, wasn't it? That the pyro hit a bunch of fans.
I believe so.
Did it?
Yeah, I remember my uncle telling me about that all the time. Yeah, we got Kane, Mark Henry. Don't remember too much about that match. JBL. Now this is actually the first time for me. CM Punk won the Money in the Bank briefcase. He won it to. Let's see, he may have won it 2 years in a row.
He won this one and then next year's.
I know he won it 2 times. This one had CM Punk, Shelton Benjamin, Jericho, Carlito, MVP, Mr. Kennedy, and John Morrison. John Morrison had a lot of good spots in this match. like you would probably predict that he would. Normally in ladder matches is what he shines at. Sean Benjamin, again, in the Money in the Bank, he had a really good showing. Batista and Umaga battle for the brand supremacy. It was a pretty good match. I don't remember too much about it. Kane and Chavo Guerrero. That was a pretty. It was whatever it was. 11-second match on WrestleMania, so it was what it was. My favorite match of the entire night, probably Shawn Michaels and Ric Flair. It was supposed to be Ric Flair's last match. Whoever lost had to retire. But Ric Flair lost, and he did not retire. He later would show up in total nonstop action and wrestle. But that was a really good match and a very defining moment in wrestling history that a lot of people still remember when Shawn Michaels said, "What was it?"
I'm sorry.
I love you.
Yeah, I got that. I got a shirt of that says that. A really, really good match. Randy Orton, Triple H, and John Cena was a pretty good match. A WrestleMania that John Cena did not win, finally. These last few WrestleManias, he's won every single one of them. JBL, Shawn Michaels, Triple H.
But if I remember correctly, Cena was still protected, though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Randy Orton did win. And again, OVW guys, Randy Orton and John Cena. Floyd Money Mayweather versus Big Show. Floyd won by knockout. It was a very interesting match, for sure. I'd like to see something like that today with like, I don't know, who you would, like Conor McGregor and Brock Lesnar. Something like that. We'll probably never see that because of one person I just said. But that was a moment that I enjoyed. And The Undertaker and Edge was a really, really good match for the world title. It was the main event of WrestleMania. I really enjoyed that match. The matches that really stuck out to me was that match. Randy Orton, the triple threat with Randy Orton, them, Shawn Michaels, Ric Flair, Money in the Bank. We also got Beth Phoenix and Melina versus Maria and Ashley. It was what it was. Yeah, that's what I got to say about that.
Yeah, Amer, how about you?
Gosh, I'm looking at this and I'm saying, it's gosh, where to go? Where to even go with this? So many ups and downs. Belfast Brawl, kind of an underrated match, right? Just two big guys just beating the hell out of each other, and it's a little underrated to watch. Just like two guys just going all out. Like I don't even know what to say about that. You can see they're really laying it in and just having fun. And I bet they went out and just closed the bar that night. That's for sure. Money in the Bank. It's really nice to see the ascendance of Punk. I believe, and again, you guys might have to correct me if I'm wrong. He had kind of freed himself, or I don't know if that's the right verbiage, but he was not really ECW anymore, right? He was back more on the Raw main roster and whatnot, or was he still in ECW at this point? Was he?
SmackDown, I believe.
He was SmackDown.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I thought. So now you can kind of see, okay, there's something to this guy, right? And I think Vince had started to see it, and others in WWE had kind of started to see it. So it's good to see that this is kind of the rise of Punk in a sense. The other matches in the middle, yeah, I could definitely take or leave him. That's for sure. Poor Chavo Guerrero, like really, really poor. And I'm having Kerwin White flashbacks. Anyway. Shawn Michaels, Ric Flair. See, interestingly, Connor and Jason, you were actually there, so you may not even have noticed. But when I was following along on the internet, Shawn says, "I'm sorry, I love you." Did you guys notice, because you were both there, that in the Sting retirement match, the Bucks actually said to him, "We're not sorry, we hate
you." Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, you guys did catch that when you were there, huh? Okay, probably because they showed it on the
they had it on the big screens.
Right. Okay. So it's kind of apropos that we're talking about this, because that was kind of a nice touch, right? That kind of juxtaposition and opposition there, kind of neat. The women's match, the Playboy thing. You know what? It's like anything else. If Playboy's paying money for a match, you got to give them what they're paying for, right? So okay, whatever it is, what it is. I mean, it's an excuse for Snoop Dogg to show up and whatever and do his thing, and you can't say that Snoop Dogg isn't entertaining, right?
Yeah.
So it is what it is. Sorry. Was somebody saying something? No, okay. Cena. Jason, you mentioned that he was kind of protected, but he actually took the pin in this match. Interestingly enough, I just had to go back and check that. Orton punted Triple H. It was something along the lines of, and I don't remember it completely, but it's a little bit of a fuzzy memory for me. But I think Triple H had pedigreed Cena and was gonna beat him, but then Randy Orton punted Triple H and pushed him out of the way, and he pinned Cena. That's kind of how it happened. So Cena actually did eat the pin. Not that it cost him anything, because I think after the previous WrestleMania's match with Shawn Michaels, he was a made guy, right? I mean, he could lose and it wouldn't matter, right? It's like Stone Cold losing a match today. Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't tarnish Stone Cold. And if The Rock loses a match, like he might at some point soon, what does it matter, The Floyd Mayweather thing I thought was more entertaining than it had any right to be. I don't know how else to say it, right? It was actually not that bad. Certainly it was better than that, travesty with Akebono. And, if you're going to put somebody in those kind of, attraction matches, well, yeah, put Big Show in there, right? Because why the hell not? That Undertaker Edge match, underrated. I think one of the Undertaker's better matches at WrestleMania, no question. Just from a technical standpoint, I would say, yeah, good card overall.
Yeah, Jason.
Well, JBL and Finlay, I always enjoyed Finlay's work in WCW. I thought he was a little underutilized in WWE, but that's what we came to expect with the guys they brought over for the most part. Poor Umaga, we talked about it. He would squash everybody else, but as soon as you put him in the ring with anybody that had a name, he always took the fall. And then poor old Chavo. How the mighty have fallen from the days of Los Guerreros.
Oh.
And we skipped.
I remember. Sorry, don't mean to cut you off, but this is something I was going to say, and I forgot. I apologize. But somebody had mentioned that, geez, if his last name wasn't Guerrero, can you imagine how different Chavo's career could have been?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, so go ahead.
Then we get to the Play Bunny match. Maria and Ashley both did. They did Playboy. Melina, Beth Phoenix, no. Stephanie was always the one I wanted to see in Playboy, but that was just a personal preference. Keep moving. If the triple threat match I enjoyed.
Cornette agrees with you, by the way.
Oh, does he?
Yeah, he does.
I'd never heard that of. I knew I liked it.
Cornette was the one who suggested it. Cornette was why don't we have this, Demi Moore looking girl on TV? That's what started it.
Well, the more and more we're learning, Vince might have tried it. She might have put it, she might have shut it down.
I think she did. That's the story I heard. Yeah.
But triple threat match. What I meant by Cena being protected is, even though he ate the pin here, it was with three people in there, two of which two of the greatest of all time to ever do it. So you're not getting him pinned in a one-on-one situation. He's taking moves from everybody. Is what I meant by him being protected. I enjoyed the Floyd Mayweather Big Show stuff, to be honest with you. I don't normally like a lot of that, but I like the way they did it. And I've heard Big Show talk about it, how Floyd actually broke his nose on Raw that night. And he said, he knew he was going to hit him, but if he said what you saw in his face was if he'd have got a hold of him, he'd have killed him when he started chasing him through. But the way they did it, Floyd's people handed him the chain, and he knocked out Big Show with the chain or brass knuckles, whatever it was. It didn't make Show look that bad. He lost to an undefeated boxer using something extra on his hands. Yeah. 2 years in a row, we've seen Taker now win the championship at Mania. And then you go back up, to Shawn Michaels and Ric Flair. Yes, I shed a tear during this match. Not going to lie. And you hear a lot of talk over the years about Flair's ego, Hogan's ego, different people's ego. And I've heard more than one person tell a story, and Flair included. He said they offered for the match to go on last. He said their pitch to him was that you're going to lose, and then at the end of the match, take your boots off, put them in the middle of the ring, And, while you're saying your buys and we're going off the air, we're just going to zoom the camera in on your boots in the middle of the ring. And he shut it down. He said, no. He said, the championship, whichever one you want, is what people here are fighting for. That needs to be last. It's not about me. And, he goes back to the difficult times he had in WCW, what you were talking about, how Stone Cold, The Rock, all these people could lose, night in and night out, and it wouldn't matter. And he said it took him a little bit to figure that out when Bischoff kept having him do such, crazy stuff. And he said it took him a while to realize that he was Ric Flair and he was always going to be Ric Flair, no matter what they put him out there to do. And he said Triple H was the one that got that back in his head, and he would be forever grateful. But like I said, Flair, Piper, my two favorites of all time. And what's disheartening for me was what Connor talked about, how Flair went to TNA and had wrestled some more. What AEW did for Sting was phenomenal. But nobody, even The Undertaker, did not get a send-off like they did for Ric Flair, who was not a homegrown WWF, WWE talent. The build-up to the match, and Flair said he didn't want to retire. That was all Vince. So, you can see why he wrestled again later. But the build-up they did, and then for the stuff they did on Monday Night Raw the next night that they did for him, if you didn't want to retire, you needed to. That should have made you want to, because you were never getting that send-off again. Yep. And, that, like I said, Sunday and Monday both, I had tears in my eyes. Grown man sitting there crying at the wrestling show, but I did. And, Shawn Michaels, and Flair's admitted that Shawn Michaels carried him through that match. And, this was the one match at WrestleMania for the next 4-year span that Shawn Michaels actually won.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No. And I, like I said, during that match, it was emotional because at the time I really did think Flair was done, and, as a wrestling fan, you really think that, hey, he's done. Because that's the story they're presenting you and you believe it. You're like, okay, so this is for real. He's crying. He's hugging his family. It's actually done. He's not wrestling again. And like Connor says, he shows up to TNA and, doesn't have a bad thing in TNA, just you retired from wrestling. Why are you doing this now, man? You're good. You don't have to keep putting your body through this. But again, maybe it's just the love that he had for the sport and everything like that, or maybe it was ego, but nobody knows. It's Ric Flair. Ric Flair's going to do Ric Flair things. Yeah, and it was money too, but it's Ric Flair. Ric Flair's going to do Ric Flair things, Yeah. But I honestly loved this match. It had that emotion, and it was so weird seeing a young Charlotte Flair there. And I think at the time it was still David too. David Flair was still there, and so it was weird just seeing them that still young at the ringside crying for their dad. So it was kind of emotional. This card in general wasn't too bad. I will say, taken away that, like you said, Amer, earlier, you do see the ascend of CM Punk, pretty much CM Punk becoming that name in professional wrestling. There was so much hype building around him when he debuted in the WWE ECW. Basically from those people that actually knew him from his Ring of Honor days, that knew he was coming over from there and he was coming to WWE. So you kind of saw that rise of CM Punk starting here. And like you said,
if I remember correctly, he's the first indie darling they really ever did sign.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then obviously, you started off with a Belfast brawl to get the crowd ready, for the night's activities. Again, Batista, Umaga, that brand supremacy between the big boys. Obviously Batista's one of those guys. It's like, he's got to win, even though he doesn't need to. Maybe you get upset there with Umaga, but there's more to it. And then again, you had, I believe, just one women's match, and it wasn't even for the women's title. It was just a Lumberjill Playboy Bunny Mania match. And this is where you kind of saw where the women's division was kind of taken as you're beautiful women. We're just going to showcase you. We don't care about your skills, even if you can wrestle. We just want to put you on TV. We're still in that era of let's get them in their bra and panties and get the males all excited. Later on, you do see kind of a change with the women's revolution and all that stuff. But here you still just get, and you had a phenomenal wrestler in there in Beth Phoenix. Beth Phoenix could go. And they put her in a match like this, So, and obviously Melina's skills, previous women's champion. You know, you saw her skills. I agree with you guys. The Floyd Mayweather and the Big Show match was kind of fun for me. Just to see like a mainstream athlete come in and do this was like the first time I've ever seen it. You know, actually prior to with Lawrence Taylor and Bam Bam Bigelow, but now you see it like now with someone like Floyd Mayweather. It was kind of fun to watch. The triple threat match was great. You had three of the best in there. All of them had great chemistry working together for as long as they did. And then obviously, sending everybody home happy with The Undertaker, keeping his undefeated streak intact while winning the title. Unfortunately, there was, like Connor said earlier, there was that situation where during the celebration, some fireworks were going off and some power lines or whatever from it kind of it was a malfunction of the pyrotechnics, kind of fell in the crowd, and about 40 people were about injured during that, mostly like burns from the sparks and everything. No one was seriously hurt. But yeah, they were criticized for that. And I think that's why they changed up their whole, situation and how they do fireworks now at shows. Now that it's not too close to where seating is, it's more raised up. So nobody's like close to it, and they have it to a way if you watch shows, they have it on the outside of the building as well.
That's like when Taker caught on fire coming out for that elimination chamber.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, it was a big change from that. But overall, it was a decent card. I think it was very, you had the right people on the card and you had some of the right storytelling in it. Before we move on to 25, are there any last takes of WrestleMania 24?
Well, you talk about Ric Flair continuing to wrestle. If anybody doesn't think he hadn't whispered in Tony Khan's ear going, hey, I can still go, put me in a match, it's Ric Flair. He's trying, and hopefully Tony keeps saying no, but trust me, he's trying.
I'm glad that he doesn't. I mean, he can take the spots that he wants to, like he did at Revolution, where they're like, that is a 70-year-old man. You don't just super kick him. I'm like, it's Ric Flair. Ric Flair's going to take the bumps no matter how old he is. Who cares? I agree. I think they should have left it as is. It was just great storytelling there. But as we move on to the final WrestleMania for tonight, we talk about the 25th WrestleMania. It happened in 2009, which is crazy because, again, 1984 is when it all started. So now 25 years later, we're back to the 25th. Previously we talked about the 20th. This year we talked about the 25th anniversary, and this one was a big one. This one was in the I can't even pronounce it. Reliant Stadium. Thank you. I can't even talk tonight. And again, it had all three brands again. It had Raw, SmackDown, and ECW. So again, you still had all three brands represented on this card. And the card wasn't too bad. You had some great matches, not so great matches. Obviously, one thing we haven't talked about this show is entrances for WrestleManias and people's entrances throughout the years. We mentioned it a couple times, but not a lot. Some of this stuff had some really good entrances, but for the card, it was set up really good. The pre-show match was a unification match between the tag titles with the Clones battling Morrison and Miz. Then you had the main show kickoff with the Money in the Bank match with CM Punk winning his second in a row, wrestling against Christian, who also wrestled, I believe this was his second or third Money in the Bank. Mm-hmm. Then you had Finlay, Kane, who was also in another Money in the Bank match that he was in, Kofi Kingston, Mark Henry, MVP, and Shelton Benjamin. Then you had something we could have done without, the Miss WrestleMania Battle Royal with Mae Young and Santina Morello winning it. Then
Dude's a moron, but he is funny.
He's funny, yes. Then we had Chris Jericho battling the Legends with basically Mickey Rourke in the audience, because this was during the time of when The Wrestler came out with Mickey Rourke, and Chris Jericho's character was criticizing it and bashing Mickey Rourke. and Mickey Rourke was at WrestleMania. So he says, as legends, I'm going to go through all of them, and I can beat every single one of them. So he wrestled Jimmy Snuka, Ricky Steamboat, and Roddy Piper. There's your boy there, Jason, Roddy Piper.
Noticed or not, but
Matt Hardy wrestled Jeff Hardy in an Extreme Rules match. This is when the brothers were feuding. Rey Mysterio beat JBL in 21 seconds for the Intercontinental title. Then The Undertaker wrestled Shawn Michaels in one of the best WrestleMania matches in history. Then you had John Cena wrestle Big Show and Edge in a triple threat for the World Heavyweight title. And then you had Triple H wrestle Randy Orton for the WWE title with the stipulation that he'd been counting out or disqualified, he would lose the title. Connor, what's your take on this card from WrestleMania 25?
So, no, CM Punk wins the Money in the Bank again. Got Christian, Finlay, Kane, Kingston, Henry, Tony Atlas, believe it or not. MVP, Sean Benjamin, got again. He's getting just about all these Money in the Banks. And he probably had the spot of the night. Or I won't say the spot of the night, but the spot of this match. Jericho beat Snuka, Steamboat, and Piper with Ric Flair. That was what it was. We had Matt Hardy versus Jeff Hardy. Extreme Rules match. This I was really into because I listened many times on here. Jeff Hardy was my favorite wrestler growing up and still is one of my favorite wrestlers. Every Halloween, I would dress up as Jeff Hardy. I'd spray paint my hair. I'd get the armbands with necklaces. I would even act like Jeff Hardy in the trampoline, believe it or not. Maybe I shouldn't have, but I would attempt to get on top of the house and do a swan-time on the trampoline, and I would try to do everything that Jeff Hardy did. Jeff Hardy, to me, was and still is one of my favorite wrestlers today. This was, for me at least, the first time I ever seen them go against each other. And I thought it was a pretty good match. The only thing I didn't like was that Matt Hardy won. Because, to me, Jeff Hardy is the better Hardy. Me personally, he's just done more in his career, and he's just more popular and more entertaining. We have Rey Mysterio and JBL. This is actually JBL's last match ever. Wasn't much of a match, really. It was 21 seconds, but
he was hurt, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, he was, and he actually got to pick his retirement match. He got to pick who he wanted to go against, and it was Rey Mysterio. And JBL was one of my favorites as well. He had the best clothes on. You got John Cena, Big Show, and Edge. Probably the moment of the night was when John Cena picked up both Big Show and Edge. John Cena won that. You got Triple H and Randy Orton. It was a really good match. Triple H won. It was a really good back and forth match. This is the first time it was good to see these two main event WrestleMania as they started Evolution together, and they went against each other a few times when they broke up. But it was never on a big stage like WrestleMania. So it was kind of looking back at their history. It was good to see the main event WrestleMania. Of course, I say this for last. The Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels was really, really, really good. 25 and 26 was good, but 25 was really, really good. We talk about entrances. Shawn Michaels came out with we got the heaven, we got the hell. It was really, really cool. For me, Triple H always has the best WrestleMania entrances. He always has some of the best, but The Undertaker has really, really good ones. And Shawn Michaels, like if you do a top 50 list, Shawn Michaels would probably have to be in the top 10 in this WrestleMania. It was really, really good. And the match was really, really good too. The one spot with Undertaker doing he dived from the outside and he hit the cameraman or whatever. Like, was that actually supposed to happen, or was that planned?
So what had happened was the cameraman, I believe, was another enhancement wrestler playing the cameraman.
It was Deuce or Domino one.
It was Deuce or Domino, yes. And he was supposed to catch him, but he didn't catch him in time. He didn't drop the camera in time. Luckily, Taker kind of tucked his head underneath and kind of landed the way he did. Otherwise, if he didn't, he probably would have broken his neck.
That was pretty nasty. Like that looked really, really bad. But a really good match. That could have really may have been to WrestleMania, Undertaker with Shawn Michaels. But
I would have hated to follow it.
yeah, it was hard to follow. It was really, really good. Yeah, my favorite moment of the night was definitely Undertaker and Shawn Michaels.
Yeah, Amer, your take.
Again, very, very similar. This was reminding me of some of the WrestleManias we discussed. I forget whether it was last week or perhaps it was the week before. Maybe it was both. Where the card is really kind of top heavy. Like you had a lot of these the best matches coming at the end, and kind of instead of kind of being kind of interspersed throughout the card. Although, yeah, definitely the Money in the Bank match and the Hardys match was quite good. I still the Hardys match. Looking back at that one, reminds me of again WrestleMania 18 during the Access event. You know, before WrestleMania, there was one point where they had like a ring with some matches, and one of the interesting matches was Matt Hardy against Jeff Hardy. So I remember seeing that, and that was quite entertaining. It was just an exhibition match, obviously, but then like Al Snow was kind of the master of ceremonies for that, and then he called up a couple of kids in the crowd who were actually dressed like the Hardys. And they came up and they did all the Hardy mannerisms. They had lots of fun. And Al Snow was like, "Okay, kids, get out of here." It's like none of you chuckleheads do the stuff that the Hardys do. They're trained professionals and all that. And Al Snow had to, remind the kids in the crowd about what they were seeing. So that's what that reminded me of. We mentioned about Mickey Rourke. Oh, the original plan apparently was to have Chris Jericho against Mickey Rourke as kind of an attraction match. But Mickey Rourke's people were just like, no, you don't want to be involved in any of that fake stuff. It'll ruin your career, that sort of thing. Not that, not that he's had such a great career since that movie, but whatever, it is what it is. JBL and Rey Mysterio, again, my understanding is, JBL was hurt. He knew it was his last match. But my understanding is that he wanted to do for Rey Mysterio what Eddie Guerrero had done for him. If you remember that Eddie put him over, JBL, me, him, pronouns, pal, to kind of make JBL in a match where Eddie lost a lot of blood. That was back in 2005, obviously. I think it was one of the last matches of Eddie's career. And he wanted to repay the favor. He said, well, who better to do that than Rey Mysterio, right? Undertaker and Shawn Michaels, that match, I think it's probably the best match ever at WrestleMania. You could make a case for Bret and Austin, but for my money, just in terms of the presentation of this match and just overall and the psychology, the way the match was laid out, the way they paced it, I don't think you'll find a better match. And this is the thing, I'm trying to steer clear of all of the tribalism and nonsense that goes on social media. As you can see from my blurb underneath my name there, I'm getting too old for that kind of crap. But, when we see matches, and they're tremendous matches, just like the one we saw on Dynamite last night with Will Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher. What a tremendous match. But, people would look back at this kind of match, Undertaker and Shawn Michaels, and say, well, look, they're kicking out all sorts of finishes. What's the difference? It's like, well, the difference is look at the way that they are pacing themselves, right? It's not just, finish after finish after finish and false finish and kick out and kick out and kick out. You give the audience a little bit of room to breathe. You let the guys sell it. You see their facial expressions. You see the expression of the Undertaker, the unbelief that I can't put this guy down, right? And the same from Shawn and all of that kind of stuff. And I just wish, and it's so tough to get that across when you're discussing things, and I'm too old to even try anymore. I wish there was more of that. Don't just do 30 moves in 30 seconds and try and break some Guinness record, Make me care. Make me feel something, please. And when I watch this match again, I feel it. You don't have to tell anybody anything about what's going on in this match. You can see for yourself, what you're supposed to feel. And when it's real, you feel it. And this match to me was more real than almost anything I've seen ever since. The other two matches that followed it, they were also good matches. Big Show, I think, was placed perfectly here with John Cena and Edge. Because, those two guys can just kind of run the match and they can pick good spots so that Show can fit in really well. And I think they did a good job of that. Triple H and Randy Orton, Connor basically said what I thought. Yeah, these two guys could work together even today, Paul's heart condition notwithstanding, and still put on a great show. And they definitely did here.
Yeah. Jason, your take on this card?
Well, again, CM Punk twice in a row now with Money in the Bank. Go back to a couple of WrestleManias ago when Connor was talking about it, Edge being his favorite cash in. Just I don't know why it brought my mind up, maybe because of CM Punk again, but Seth Rollins has been my favorite cash in at WrestleMania since he did it because it was so unexpected.
Yes.
So that one for me stands out. Like I said, Santino, he could make you laugh. He was comical, man. It's like some of the stuff he did. Just sometimes it was good comic relief. You get to Jericho against Piper, Steamboat, and Snuka. I'm sure you guys remember, but this set up Ricky Steamboat and Chris Jericho at the next pay-per-view, which showed Steamboat could still go. And this match here, this whole angle here showed me how much Piper just did not care anymore. Because he had put on some weight. He had said that when he had said eventually when he first came back out and had his words with Vince, he had been in a car wreck and he asked Vince not to bring his weight up because he was swollen from the car wreck. And the first thing Vince does is bring up his gut. And he said he was ready to kill him. But at this point, you could just tell Piper didn't care anymore. I've never been a fan of the brother versus brother match, and I'm probably one of the select few that actually likes Matt Hardy better than Jeff. Now, is Jeff better? Is Jeff more entertaining and exciting in the ring? Absolutely. But Matt with the version 1, the big money Matt, the broken Matt Hardy, just some of the stuff he's done has been very entertaining. And Jeff Jeff has to speak for his stuff in ring. He can't he can't do what Matt does to draw you in. And some of my favorite stuff that I go back to was Matt Hardy and Edge actually working together when they legit wanted to rip each other's head off. And that's hats off to them and respect for them be able to go out there and do that. JBL again, you go out on your back. That's what you do. And I hadn't heard that. That's why he did it for Ray, but quick 21 seconds over and done with. John Cena, Edge, and the Big Show. Connor brought it up. One of the spots that I'll always remember is John Cena picking both them up. Now, granted, they helped him out a little bit by laying across and staying there and trying to stay as steady as they could. But that's easily 700 pounds.
That was freaking impressive.
For Cena to do that with. Triple H and Randy Orton. If you go back when Randy Orton won the world title and Evolution turned on him, when they did the pay-per-view match with Orton and Triple H, I was very surprised because Triple H kind of squashed him. If you go back and watch it, I mean, it was 13, 15-minute match and one pedigree and it was over. And I was just like, wow, really? Oh, okay. Yeah. Who'd Randy make mad? And I'm sure he beat Triple H on a pay-per-view. I just don't remember. If I remember correctly, this was about the time when he was out there handcuffing Triple H to ring ropes and kissing Stephanie after he had RKO'd her and stuff to that nature. And again, like you guys said, they could probably, if Paul was able to go, they could probably go out there and put on a clinic now. And then you go to, I go back up to Taker and Michaels. Again, I said, I would hate to, I don't care who you were, how good a match you could give. I would have hated to had to follow that.
Yeah.
And this is by far, I've got a lot of, we've talked about matches, especially the early ones that I thoroughly enjoyed. Nothing comes close to this one for me. The next one was really good, but it was not this one.
Correct.
And tell you a funny story because you guys are old enough to remember when Hooters used to actually put on the pay-per-views. When Hooters would show the pay-per-views. A friend of mine had been telling me for like 3 or 4 years, man, you got to come to Hooters and watch pay-per-view. I said, I have no desire to go to Hooters and watch pay-per-view. And he's like, no, man, it's like being in an arena, I'm like, whatever. So he kept bugging me. And finally, this was a year. I said, all right. He goes, you got to get here early, man. It gets busy. And man, I got there and he was right. It was like being inside a smaller arena. There was people in there with belts, styling and profiling up and down the aisles of Hooters. And you could see the waitresses just rolling their eyes and going, good God, is this over yet? Screaming and wooing and doing everything. But I mean, the build up to this match, like the following year, it was Michaels wanting the rematch and putting his career on the line. But this year it was more about the good versus the evil.
Yes.
You had the Undertaker actually come up from the depths of hell onto the top of the stage, and then Michaels being lowered down in the light, dressed all in white, the whole good versus evil, the way they put it together. And then, like Amber said, it's just, yes, they were kicking out of stuff, but not every 5 seconds.
That's it.
Yeah.
And the facial expressions, especially like when Michaels kicked out of this, if I believe the second tombstone, if I remember correctly, the look on Taker's face was like, what do I have to do? Kill this guy?
That's
Yeah.
it.
And, it's just, if anybody ever wants to sit down and watch how a match could, I don't care if it's been, 15 years ago, that could still go out there and hold an audience today, go watch this one. And, you brought up Fletcher and Ospreay from last night. I actually enjoyed that match more than I did Ospreay and Takeshi at the pay-per-view. But that's just a personal opinion. I like that one last night better than I did the one at the pay-per-view.
No, I totally agree with you in that, Jason. To some of your points, I was more of a Matt Hardy guy. I loved Matt Hardy's development into changing his character, like I said, from the Hardys to Matt version 1.0 to broken Matt Hardy to money Matt Hardy, with Private Party and all that. He could just change it on a dime, and he was probably one of my favorites. Not to take away anything from Jeff. Jeff by far was a fan favorite. Everybody loved Jeff. Everybody wanted to see Jeff succeed and everything like that, which is sad. You never saw Matt hold a major world title in WWE. I'm not going to call the ECW world title a major title there, even though he held it. I don't recognize that. That's WWE's ECW. That's not ECW or WWE separated. But to your point, I do agree that Ospreay Fletcher match was much more entertaining, and I actually liked it. It was probably better paced than the Kesha match at Revolution. But they both put on a clinic, and I'm very excited to see where they go with Ospreay and Daniel Bryan now. But for the overall feel of this card, I talked about it earlier, and we've been hinting at it. It's the entrances. We talk about Shawn Michaels, ascending from the heaven or descending from the heavens, and Taker ascending from hell. But some of the other entrances were great. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed Triple H just coming out to the glass and throwing the sledgehammer. But John Cena's entrance with all the Cena people lined up doing the "You Can't See Me" as he's running to the ring was kind of cool as well. That was a moment for me in that pay-per-view as well. And then obviously another moment is when Mickey Rourke got in the ring and knocked out Chris Jericho. I was like, cool. I love Mickey Rourke. And then, yes, we talk about the ascending of CM Punk winning the second in a year in a row. I will say one of my top 2 favorite cash-ins for Money in the Bank actually was CM Punk on Edge on the Raw, where Batista couldn't beat Edge anymore, and Edge was going to take the title to SmackDown. And at the time, CM Punk was on Raw. So CM Punk cashed in on Raw and won that first world title. I actually thoroughly enjoyed that. That was one of my top 2, top 3. The John Cena Big Show match, Edge, was really good. Really fun triple threat. Just looking at the card, the 4 matches that had the longest length matches were the Money in the Bank, Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, and the 2 world title matches had the longest runs, which should be. I mean, there are some of the big highlight marquee matches on that card. They should have the most time on them. One match we really, I think, could have done better in was the women's battle royal. I think that was just more so a comedy spot for Santino Marella, which is fine. You kind of see it with R-Truth now, where a lot of the comedy spots on TV is R-Truth. But I don't think you can take away the monumental feel that you got with that first Shawn Michaels Undertaker match at WrestleMania 25. There's something about that match. And you don't even have to be a WWE fan. If you watch that match, you just watch and you goes, that's a wrestling match. That, like we talk about. And Jason, Amer, you both said it like before when we talk about matches that we talked about previous WrestleManias, usually the big matches that go that length and have the best build and the best pace are in the middle of the card, or they're barely at the top. But man, there's something about this match that just sticks with you as a fan. And honestly, I think this one was one of the, during that transitional time of Ruthless Aggression to PG, I think this WrestleMania was probably one of the better WrestleMania cards during that transitional era. So I thoroughly enjoyed this card. And I mean, there's really not much I can touch upon. So
I think that's what I look toward every year at WrestleMania is hoping, something can either, come close, if not surpass it. I keep waiting. It's like a lot of you guys have been around long enough, show me what you got.
Right. Yeah, no, I totally agree. Before we wind down here, are there any last takes on the WrestleMania 25 card?
I'm kind of looking at it and I'm saying, it's a shame about the women's match, definitely. But, I'm looking at the participants in this match, and I'm not going to list them all. But, there's maybe, of the 20 some odd women that are here, I can count them all. There's like 3 or 4 of them who are like, okay, there's Gail Kim, there's Beth Phoenix, there's Victoria, who was, kind of on the, the other side of her career. Melina was there. But not a lot of, there were a lot of, this was the Dolly era, right? With a few exceptions. And, we just weren't there yet. So, again, it's just people like Beth Phoenix and Trish Stratus just kind of being a victim of a not so much talented women's division. It's really a shame. And I think that might be a reason why it was so top heavy. Because even the people who were in, the lumberjack match and some of these other, not, the bottom of the card, WWE's lacking a little bit in terms of like star power across the board. And we're kind of spoiled going into WrestleMania 40 that you have so many guys who could be main eventers. And there really weren't that many at this point, it seems. All the ones who were there are right up there at the top of the card, the 6 or 7 guys.
Well, you talk about 40 coming up, and I'll just throw this out there, before we get there. And, you always get, you didn't know that was going to happen. I for the first time in a long time, I got a good idea and be like, they'll probably run it this way. I have no idea what they're doing this year. I mean, if you paid attention to the whole thing on SmackDown last week when, Roman asked The Rock to acknowledge him, and even though he did it, the look he gave him, and then you fast forward to Monday, and you see the looks that Seth Rollins is giving Cody Rhodes while he's talking. There's a whole lot of different ways they can go with this. I'm, for the first time in a long time, they had me interested.
Yeah, I agree. I liken it to a show, like really, really good shows that I love, like Breaking Bad, and that's probably the biggest one. Even though I know what's going to happen, just watching it unfold and the way they do it, you really have something there. When you have an audience, it's like, even if I knew the story, I'd still want to see it unfold.
I mean, I told my fiance, I said, at this point, I said, it wouldn't surprise me for Rollins to cause them to lose that match, on night 1. And everybody they assume automatically that Cody's going to lose because it's bloodline rules. But then you have The Rock turn on Roman and cause him to lose, which sets them 2 up. Now, that's just one theory. That's one theory I have, but God only knows at this point.
Yeah, you could have Stone Cold come out. You could, and that would be fine. There's all sorts of ways they can go. I look at it and I say, you know what? They've done this almost perfectly, except for 4 words, but not at WrestleMania.
Agreed.
If Cody had not said that, then you could have spun every single thing that happened any way you wanted, right? Instead, it's very obvious that they had to pivot, and they've done a masterful job at it. But if not for those 4 words, this would be like perfect storytelling.
Yeah, one of the reasons that I hadn't had an issue with, and not that it's been great TV over the past, however many years that they did with Brock and they've done with Roman not being there. What I grew up on, the champion was hardly ever there. And if you got Hogan on TV, it was setting up a pay-per-view. It was setting up a Saturday night's main event. Flair was traveling the country, so you might get him every 3 to 5 weeks on TBS, depending on where he was. And that's what they did. It was an infomercial where they talked people in the buildings to see stuff. And, to me, we're getting the same thing, just on a larger production scale. Back those days, they were talking at the desk, with a studio, 30, 40 people. But now they've got an arena of, 15, 18,000 people. They can get in the ring and talk to the announcers. But to me, if you actually sit down and dissect it, it's a lot of the same thing that we actually grew up on.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I watched wrestling for 8 or 9 months, and I'm talking like in 1984 and 1985. I didn't even know who Hulk Hogan was because you never saw him on TV. Right? I love Tito Santana because you'd see him at least every week or two on TV, and he was the Intercontinental Champion, right? He was the guy you saw. And then someday one person mentioned Hulk Hogan, you're like, who's that? Because you never saw him on TV.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that during that time when he first initially took over creative, I think Paul was doing so much better trying to glorify both those mid-card titles, the US and the Intercontinental, because those guys were on TV every week, those champions. And I think that's Paul's ode or feeling from the old days, where you don't need to see the main champion on TV, but if we can keep these mid-card champions and kind of show prestige for them and glorify them, then we've got something and we're doing it. And like Jason said, it's bringing the big title holders in to promote a show, to promote a big show coming up or a big live event that's happening in a different country. But I think that's what Paul is doing, and I think he's doing it better. And I think that's something I don't want to say. I mean, AEW is doing great with, like I said, I think with Samoa Joe as their champion right now. They were doing great with MJF too. MJF was on the show every week, and they used a story for it of he has to be here. He's contractually obligated to be here. I think that was a great storyline for him to show up, because it was part of his character. Joe is there because Joe is just the guy that will put the promotion over, and he will be there every week. He doesn't have to be contractually obligated storyline wise. He just shows up because they trust in him, and he's got that career and that respect that he's got. And I think that's one good thing AEW has, is that transition from MJF to Samoa Joe. You still got that weekly guy there as your champion. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're still promoting the TNT title. They're still promoting, heck, they're promoting the women's title, the TBS title, and even the international championship. But when we talk about the main big guys on the show weekly, I think that's one difference you see is WWE finds a way to glorify their mid-card titles where AEW can get all of them in. And I think that's good for both companies, and I think that's good for when they push for big shows. And like you said, Jason, for this year's WrestleMania, again, it's gotten everybody talking because, again, you don't know what route they're going to go with all the storylines and what each night's going to bring. Who knows about what that match is going to bring night one or the main event will bring night two. But again, we talk about this because as wrestling fans, yes, we're geared towards AEW, but we just like to talk wrestling. And I'm probably going to take a book out of Kevin Von Erich's interview today about
such
talking.
A good dude, man.
He's such a great man. Yeah, he's such a great person. About him just saying that, we're all people, we're all humans and everything like that. And, he doesn't, I think he did mention he doesn't get in that whole, situation of choosing one promotion over another. He just appears,
absolutely
where he's good, And I think that's one thing we as wrestling fans have to understand, that we don't have to be toxic towards each other, that we don't have to have this tribalism.
Well, I'm going to piggyback on that real quick, not to interrupt you, but
no, go ahead. I'm pretty much done.
Connor can tell you, he and I kind of went back and forth for probably a couple of months before I ever decided to jump on. And one of the reasons that I took so long to do it was not, I mean, you see, I have fun with this. I enjoy this. But one of the reasons I took so long to do it was, I didn't know you guys. And the last thing that I wanted to do was, try to escape from life for a couple hours by getting on a show and arguing with people, calling each other names and stuff because they have difference of opinions. And that's why it took me so long to finally say, okay, I'll give it a try. But, you talked about how the business has changed, and I'll end it on this and let you guys wrap it up. But, with what I can't talk, what we just experienced with Sting, getting ready for that match and getting ready to go to Greensboro, I went back and watched a few things. And, I watched, the Clash of the Champions match. And I don't know how long it's been since you guys watched that. But, 2 or 3 minutes into it, Flair's got Sting in a hammerlock. And Sting just, does the duck under and reverses the hammerlock. And the crowd popped for a reversal of a hammerlock. I'm like, well, you won't see that much anymore. And then, of course, Sting, he was supposed to win the title in February, but he hurt his knee in that angle when they were doing they turned on him and everything. But when he did finally win the title, he won it with a roll up. It wasn't a throwing him through glass. It wasn't throwing him through this. It wasn't hitting him with 400 chairs. And that's not a knock on anything today. It's just, if the psychology's done right, it can still be done to get a pop out of the crowd. And if anybody doesn't believe that, go back and watch MJF getting people to pop for a body slam and chanting double clothesline. It can still be done if it's done correctly.
Right. Yeah, no, I totally agree. And with that, we'll try to wrap it up. We're coming up on the 2-hour mark here. But yeah, no, great conversations all around. I think we covered really some good moments in these WrestleManias. Again, we're in that transitional stage of the Ruthless Aggression era coming to an end and PG era coming to the forefront. And obviously the next 10 WrestleManias, maybe the next 5 or 10, we'll see a big change as well from that to what we get, including, big names coming back, big names debuting, women's wrestling revolution. We're going to be going over all of that in the next coming weeks as we get ready for WrestleMania 40. Everybody for joining us tonight. Thank you guys for joining. Connor, Amer, Jason, always great having you guys on talking. Not only just WrestleMania, but just wrestling in general. It's always fun talking to you guys about it. Makes me feel like a kid again. Thank you guys in the comments. Really
feeling like a kid again. I know his audio kind of got messed up there, but I don't know if you noticed or not, but when I brought up the first time I'd ever saw Kevin Von Erich against Jimmy Snuka on Georgia Championship Wrestling, he was trying to adjust his audio, but he got this big smile on his face.
Yeah,
I saw. Yeah,
and that little kid inside me was just popping, going, "Oh yeah,
yeah." So I love. No, you're good. No, yeah, and I did. Like I said, I just love talking pro wrestling with everybody. Again, you guys can catch us here on YouTube. We're on Twitch. If you missed a lot of tonight's episode, you go back, rewatch it. We got a lot of things coming up. Again, if you haven't saw it earlier, we had a live interview with the legendary Kevin Von Erich of the Von Erich family. Really awesome, down to earth dude, really well spoken, intelligent man. Love that interview with them. Tomorrow we do have the live reaction to Rampage. Saturday we will have a live reaction to Collision. Coming up next week is our next interview. We are very excited about it. He's a 2-time cruiserweight champion, former WCW, ECW, and WWE wrestler, and luchador Juventud Guerrero. We're very excited to have him on next week. Yes. So we're very excited that's going to happen next Wednesday, March 13th, before our live reaction of Big Business Dynamite for AEW. Connor, is there any other things I need to cover, or did I cover most of the things?
So you got everything. There will be another interview announced pretty soon. We had a deal in this interview with Kevin Von Erich that there's 2 interviews. One with Kevin Von Erich, and there's going to be a second interview with the Sons together, Ross and Marshall. They'll be on here together. But one day I'd like to get them all 3. I think that'll be kind of cool one of these days. But look, definitely check out our socials, and you'll be on the lookout for that.
Yeah, we're very excited. Like I said, I mentioned it earlier. I said I'd love to get all 3 of them on at the same time. It would be really awesome to just talk to the 2 generations of them. So, but yeah, no. So we thank you guys so much. Make sure you guys stick around. Make sure you guys subscribe, like, share, comment, do anything you guys want, and just be great wrestling fans, and just love one another, man. So again, I'm taking books. I'm taking things out of Kevin Von Erich's books. So with that, if there's nothing else, we will see you guys again soon. As always, good night. And Jason, looks
Good
like
night.
you're about to say something.
I'm saying good night with you.
All right. Well, good night, everybody.
All right.